Okay, folks, my name is Emmett. I'm the South Central Technical Manager for Arborjet. And before we get started talking about chlorotic trees, I want to give you a little background about myself. I've been with Arborjet for 4 years. Prior to that, I was the Plant Healthcare Manager at a Dallas area tree company. In addition to plant healthcare, I was also the stump grinder, sales, substitute crew leader, brush dragger, you name it, I kind of did it. And so in the tree care world, I've done most every job that's out there. I became a certified arborist in 2011, and last year I earned my board certified master arborist certification. Went to school at Texas Tech, have a bachelor's degree in agronomy and a master's degree in crop science, and I currently reside in Dallas. And so my educational background is really geared heavily towards soils and fertilizers and chemistries, but I found that trees are my other passion. And so now with Arborjet, I've kind of married the two working passions that I have, and really enjoy what I do. And when I'm out and about in my territory, I used to cover Arizona. I really like to go find some big trees, and so there's the best selfie I've ever taken in front of a national champion Fremont cottonwood. So finding big trees is fun, and every once in a while, if I'm lucky, I can find a big ash tree. Little tree humor there for you folks. So jumping into it, into chlorosis, what causes it? Why are trees looking this way? And the word chlorosis actually means a lack of chlorophyll. And so the reason behind chlorosis, most people will often say it's an iron deficiency. And so we're going to get into a little bit of that, or they'll say the soil is all messed up. You got a high pH soil. We'll talk about that too. But the one thing, me being a soils guy, this is really a plant problem. It's a problem with the tree or shrub or whatever is showing and exhibiting these symptoms. And if you look at these photos that are up, the one on the bottom left, you'll see you have all these oaks in a parking lot that are chlorotic. But you can see in the background there's some trees that are nice and dark green. The same thing in the photo on the right. And so if it was truly a problem with the soil, then all the other trees would be chlorotic as well. And so it's really a problem with the tree. Certain species have higher demands for the different micronutrients that are involved in the process of making chlorophyll. And so iron and manganese specifically are involved in making chlorophyll, the green part of the leaf. And so when those elements are limited, that's when you get these chlorotic symptoms. However, certain trees need more than others. And so if you plant the right tree in the right site, you will avoid all of these problems altogether. Unfortunately, in Texas, what happens is our native shoemart oaks get hybridized with pin oaks, and in the nursery, you can't tell them apart, and so they'll get to be about the size you see in that photo, and they start exhibiting their chlorotic pin oak tendencies. So to move on and talk about the soil, if you test the soil, the pH is going to be, you're going to get more information by knowing what the pH of the soil is than anything else that the test can tell you. And so I've put a bar on a pH of 8. As you move into the western United States, that's pretty typical. And in Texas, that's going to be pretty typical, anywhere between 7.5 and 8. Most trees would love to live in a pH of 6.5, and they're going to have lots of good availability of the different micronutrients. And so if you look at what gets tied up in the soil at a high pH, it's iron, manganese, copper, boron, and zinc. And so oftentimes folks say it's an iron deficiency. They're not completely wrong, but there's more to it than just iron. And generally speaking, with maples that are chlorotic, manganese is more of the issue than iron for that species. And so if you can do things to provide all of these nutrients that are bound up in the soil, you're going to have better results Iron is involved in chlorophyll production, so if you put iron on something, it usually greens it up. But if you're not addressing the others, your results may be short-lived. So oftentimes as I talk to people about chlorotic trees, they say, well, we need to do things to improve the soil. We gotta lower the pH of the soil. You can't do that, not permanently anyways. Soils are made of parent material. It's weathered down rocks that have made this soil over millions of years. And so it is what it is. You're not going to change the physical properties of that soil. They have a buffering capacity, which means a resistance to change. And so you could use a sulfur-based product and temporarily lower the pH, but it's always going to come back to its natural state. And so oftentimes people are using chelated products to deep root feed trees, but something interesting about the chelates is they're not all the same. They perform differently at different soil pH levels. And so your citric acids and sulfates are going to be your weaker chelating agents, and ETDA is also a weaker agent. Those are only going to work in soils with a pH of less than 7. So I showed you a graph that we're talking about soils that have a pH of 8 or more. And so you need to make sure if you are deep root feeding trees and shrubs with a chelated product that the agent is EDDHA. That's the strongest iron chelate out there, and it will stay in the soil solution at pHs up to 9. In addition to using a chelated product, you could use a humic acid product. That's going to help unlock existing iron and micronutrients that are in the soil. This picture on the right I took a couple of weeks ago when I was in Oklahoma City. And if you look at that soil, it's got a red color to it. That's because the soil has so much iron in it that it's actually turned the ground red. So they still have lots of chlorotic problems in Oklahoma, but that's because the pH of the soil is so high that that iron is bound up and it's not in the soil solution. You also look at that, you can tell there's very little organic matter in that soil, and so using a humic acid product is going to help unlock some of that existing iron. It's going to improve the soil structure. It's going to help get microbial activity involved the way it should be again. Another issue with deep root feeding trees is, it's not a permanent solution. You're really not going to get a permanent solution to chlorosis because, like I said, it's a problem with the tree and the site. So short of excavating the soil and backfilling with a lower pH soil, this is going to be a constant chronic issue for that plant. And so if you're deep root feeding, it's something that you're going to need to be doing annually, basically for the life of the tree if you're wanting to keep a nice dark green color. Typically, you're going to want to time your feedings in the spring during bud swell or prior to that for the tree's leaf out. So a lot of folks, what they'll do is they will inject trees with iron. It's one of the oldest uses for tree injection. And we recently released a product called Minjet FE. And so kind of the play on it there, the Minjet is Mn for manganese and Fe for iron. And so this contains equal parts, 2% iron, 2% manganese, it's 1% potassium, 0.5% zinc, and then trace amounts of copper and boron. And so all of those micronutrients that I highlighted on my pH chart are contained in this formulation. It's much more concentrated than the older formulation of Minjet that we had. The label is easier to use, and we're getting some really long-lasting results from using this product. So basically, any tree that's showing chlorotic symptoms, this product is going to do a really great job greening it up. And so as you're addressing chlorosis, you can implement both a tree injection and a soil applied product. The tree injection is going to give you some really drastic results very quickly. You're basically putting everything that tree is lacking right into its vascular system. It's immediately available, and the trees respond very quickly. And then you can keep somebody on a soil applied program, and you wouldn't have to re-inject that tree for quite some time if you're doing it that way. There's a theory, it's actually a law, it's called the law of minimum, and this is relating to soil, tree health, and the different elements that are involved for a healthy plant. And so basically what this is a plant can only be as healthy as its most limiting factor. And so in our case of chlorosis on oak trees, typically that's going to be iron. And so if you supply enough iron, that's only going to make it as healthy until you get to the next limiting factor. And so that's illustrated with this bucket over on the right, where some of the rungs are lower than others. And so if we only applied iron to an oak, sure, we're going to make it green, but it's only going to get that tree as healthy to a point to where manganese or zinc or copper may be the next limiting factor. And so that's our thinking of having all of these elements in that one product. The other interesting thing about this illustration, if you look on the back of that bucket, it says soil conditions and other growth factors. And this is some stuff that I ran into as I was injecting trees with this new product in our field studies. One particular location, the trees were very, very drought stressed and in poor health because of that. I treated them with the iron or Minjet FE, and it really didn't improve them as much as I was hoping, but it's because they're in such poor condition, and their other growth factors, water being the most limiting one, and it didn't allow them to get the results that I was looking for. And so from that side, I learned that I really needed to work on irrigated areas in order to see good results, and we'll get into some of that too. So our older product, Minjet Iron, is on the left, and you can see the rates of the percentages of active ingredient. For iron, it's 0.75, for manganese, 0.38. Then on our new Minjet FE, it's 2% and 2%. So much stronger percentages. So I was asked by somebody, well, why did you make a new one? And so basically, what I had experienced with the older product, so all these trees were treated in the fall with the old Minjet, and then the next year, they looked a lot better, but still, it just wasn't quite enough. It wasn't packing enough of the micronutrients into the trees to really get a dramatic and bring the trees all the way out of that chlorotic state. And so oftentimes guys were complaining that they treated a tree and it's still yellow. And so that got us looking into a stronger formulation. The new Minjet FE has potassium, and the reason this is in there is it sort of acts as a catalyst for all of the other micronutrients that are being applied. So if you look at what role potassium plays in plant growth, it is involved in all sorts of plant processes. And if you look at the symptoms of deficiency, chlorosis is one of them. And so sometimes this is an element that's going to be overlooked in a chlorosis treatment. Looking at the old rates, this was another complaint I was getting from applicators. If you look on the second column from the left, we have these ranges of of chemistry that can be used, and so there's a very wide range there, and guys were confused as to where they should be applying. And then we're also on the right-hand side, the label was dictating the number of tree IVs and actually the number of arbor plugs to be used on the tree. And so it was a very confusing label, and we wanted to clean that up on the new product. And so on our new Minjet FE, there's your rate table. Very simple. So we have a low rate and a high rate. So the low rate can be applied during the growing season after the leaves have hardened off. And it's only 5 milliliters per inch. This is also the recommended rate for maples and conifers. Maples do not require a large dose of these micronutrients, and neither do pines. The high rate can be used in the late fall. Oaks are very receptive to tree injection, and in Texas I can inject an oak tree pretty much year round, even if it doesn't have leaves on it. And so essentially you're looking at how severe is the deficiency. I would always grade them as light, moderate, or severe. And so if I had a tree that's severely chlorotic, I want to go in with the highest rate possible and try to zap that tree and bring it all the way out of the chlorotic state. But if I have a tree that's just kind of light or moderate, using the low rate during the growing months would be just fine. So when you compare the two products and do some math about how many grams of active ingredient are actually applied to the trees, so the chart on the left-hand side is using the low rate on a 20-inch tree. So if you look at that, at the iron alone, we're applying nearly double the amount of active ingredient or grams of iron, and way more manganese. So it's just higher in nearly every single category. And then if you look at the high rates, we're nearly 3 times the amount of iron, 4 times the amount of manganese. And if you look down at the actual milliliters of solution that's being applied, so we're packing more in a smaller dosage. So get into some spring and fall, or some before and after photos. This is sawtooth oak in Dallas. So that's a 1-month turnaround, and that was the only application that was made. It's just the spring rate of Minjet FE. This one I would have graded as a severe or advanced stages of chlorosis. This one I kind of jumped the gun. I treated a little bit too early. This is April in Dallas. And on the right-hand side of that tree, there's a branch that hadn't even put leaves out on it yet. And so what happened when I treated it in April is that right-hand side didn't fully, or the product didn't get into that area because there's no leaves to pull the product out that way. But that was a 1-month turnaround from April to May. And this next set is the same tree in 2016 and then again in 2017. And so I got some really great results from that one application that lasted for 3 years, from 2015, 2016, 2017. And I'll have to get back out and take a look at this tree this year. And so this picture shows spring or summer application right next to an untreated control, and that's the difference that you're looking at, and that's even using the low rate of product. Here's those same 2 trees last year. So that low rate, we're getting carryover from more than one season just from using the low rate. Now this tree should have been a removal. If any arborist out there was called out for that tree, they would have said to turn it into firewood. But me, being a scientist and wanting to see what what we could do. I treated it basically just for the heck of it, and I was really blown away that in 2 months' time, how much that tree had responded. Now, keep in mind, this was the only thing done was an injection, so you can really get some dramatic results out of doing a tree injection for chlorosis, and then coupling that in with a soil applied product, you could probably even get more dramatic results. I'll be curious to see. I need to go back by this location and see how this tree's doing. So those were all applications using the low spring rate. The fall applications is really what I encourage folks to do. You can pre-sell these treatments during the summer months, August, September, and come back out and make the applications in the fall, October, November, December timeframes, typically when most tree care companies are in sort of a lull for business in those fall months. So with those fall application rates, there's no risk of causing phytotoxicity or burning the leaves because the tree is going to be defoliating anyways. And so what we're able to do is pack in that 2x or 3x dosage and get some even longer lasting results. So this is from October of 15 to June of 16. That homeowner was ecstatic at what their tree looked like that year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get more progression photos of this tree. This is another tree that I did that should have been a removal. This tree is probably growing in one of the harshest environments I've ever seen. It's in an O'Reilly's parking lot. It does not get irrigation. It gets full exposure to the sun. This is in Dallas. People probably dumping antifreeze and power steering fluid on it all the time. So this was using the high rate of product, and you can see a dramatic difference of foliage. Granted, my photo was taken October 29th, so the tree had probably already lost some leaves due to it being fall. But in that second picture, you can see that the tree is in such bad condition that it was actually dying back. And then last year, trees beginning to revert back to chlorosis, but that has to do with those site conditions. And so had I been utilizing more than just one product, I imagine we could have got some better results. But just seeing what the injection can do is really impressive. So these next series of photos, if you look at the top, it says 165 milliliters neat. So that means undiluted. This product can be applied through the tree IV with dilution or through our QuickJet Air undiluted. And so this particular location, I was looking at looking to see if I would see differences if diluting with water helps it perform better or anything like that. And so this was undiluted. This is the tree right next to that one. And I diluted with water. And so basically, I saw no differences in response if you dilute it or not. It's important to clean your equipment after using MinJet FE. It's essentially liquid metals, and all of our equipment has metal components. And so it can be very corrosive, and if you don't clean it out, you're going to be going through a bunch of repair parts on your Arborjet equipment. And so I learned this the hard way. I'm one of those guys, do as I say, not as I do. And yeah, I had to repair some of my equipment due to leaving this stuff in there too long. So after your last job, flush your equipment out with lots of water or use our CleanJet product, and just make sure you get all of that fertilizer out of the equipment. Timing these applications is very important. You have a couple of windows. You don't want to apply this product while the trees are leafing out and the growth is tender. Basically, you'll cause a fertilizer burn and the tree will defoliate. So as I was doing the testing on this, I needed to see when that happened. And so too early caused it. If I treated a tree that was drought stressed during the hot summer months, that would cause phytotoxicity. But if the trees are well hydrated, I really couldn't get the trees to burn. So your windows for application, depending on what part of the country you're in, June nationwide is typically a good month for making these applications. If you're in the southern part of the United States, like South Texas, Houston, they can start doing this stuff as early as March. They have a very long growing season there. So your early summer is one window, and then the fall or winter is another window. Like I said, with red oaks, they really have no problems with injection, and you can basically treat them year-round. You could also make these applications early in the spring on oak trees before they put on any foliage, and you could still use those higher fall rates without any risk of harming the trees. But probably one of the biggest things I learned working with this was hydration. I waited on a particular set of trees until it was consistently in the triple digits in Texas, and I wanted to burn the leaves off the trees and see if I could do that. And so I waited till summer. It was hot. I used a high rate, and because the trees were in a well irrigated area, they still responded to it great and had very little phytotoxicity. So making sure the trees are hydrated is super important. When I treated drought stressed trees, that's when I was frying the leaves off. So make sure the trees are watered prior to and after these applications. Another tool that can be used in the management of chlorosis is a growth regulator. Shortstop is 22.3% Paclobutrazol. One of the side effects of using a growth regulator is that it enhances the production of chlorophyll. So chlorosis is the lack of chlorophyll. Shortstop, a growth regulator, enhances the production of chlorophyll. So using this in tandem with the Minjet SE, you could get some really long-lasting results, especially on oak trees. They respond very well to Paclobutrazol. So what growth regulators are known for is slowing down tip growth. So basically they reduce the length of the internodes in between leaves. And so that top stem was a tree treated with Shortstop. And you can see the current year's growth highlighted in maroon is about 4 inches long versus the untreated on the bottom had about a foot of growth. And when you look at them overhead, you have a much more dense looking branch. And you can see the darker green color on that treated tree. There's lots of opportunities to use Shortstop, not just for chlorosis or trying to slow down growth. It's widely used in construction or areas where you have a limited root zone like a street tree. I was actually talking to a municipality the other day about that. So it's going to slow down the caliper growth as well. So something like that with a grate around it, if they had implemented a growth regulator on that tree years ago, they could extend the useful life of that tree. It's great for anything that's in a stressful situation, which most of our urban trees are. If you have trees near a structure or you want to maintain a manicured appearance with ornamentals, And it's also really great to aid with drought tolerance. So in summary, chlorosis is often misdiagnosed as iron deficiency. And although iron is a problem, there's lots more involved. The soil is not the problem. It's the species. You've got the wrong tree for that soil. And so education and planting the right trees for that area will cut down on chlorosis. You're not going to be able to lower the pH of the soil permanently. And so if you're using a product, make sure you're using a proper chelated product and implement the use of humic acids and other things to improve organic matter. Using tree injection is going to give you the rapid green up that you're looking for. Get a happy customer, and that can buy you some time to start working on those soils. If you have a tree that's in really rough shape, so like that O'Reilly's tree, when I go back to it, I probably will treat it with the Shortstop and give it another shot of Minjet FE. If you have a tree in those stressful spots, implementing both of those tools can really help you accomplish what you're looking for. And that is all for our chlorosis talk today, folks. I'm going to go ahead and unmute this, and if you have any questions, we'll talk through it.